Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. OTAs and mini camps are now over, which means that the next big event on the Browns calendar is training camp. And that means now we can fully look at OTAs, we can fully look at mini camps, and we can really evaluate what happened there, what I feel good about, what I don't, looking at the whole thing. And this is mostly going to be, I would say this is pretty much going to be a positive video. I'm pretty happy with where the Browns are. Now, that being said, it's important to note that it'd be pretty hard to mess it up at this point, right? Like, you would have to be trying to mess it up or have to be a disaster on par with what we saw last year to have even questions at this point. Everybody should feel good about their team coming out of OTAs. The question is, if you don't feel great about your team at the OTAs, or not great, if you don't feel okay with your team or some sense of optimism with your team at the OTAs, then there's a problem. But it's really a pass-fail thing for everybody, right? You can't get an A+ in OTAs. You can only pass it. And I think the Browns have passed OTAs. I expect a lot of other teams to pass their OTAs. But I think if I look at it for what we know, the Browns got out of it exactly what they needed to get out of it. It seems like the coaches are pretty happy with the process, the progress that they're making on installs. Now, how can this be something that goes differently? I remember last year, the noise coming out of OTAs was that they were very obviously working on a new offense, and you can see that friction at play at OTAs, right? There were a lot of procedural penalties, a lot of start-stop, a lot of different things, right? Not a lot of time for reps, not a lot of time for team drills, because there was so much stopping and starting. And what that means when you hear it is that the install is not going smoothly. What they spent 2 weeks teaching did not really translate well to the field, which meant that they had sloppy installs last year. This year seems like that teaching has gone a lot more smooth. It helps that a lot of these guys are very experienced in what they're supposed to be doing, because this is basically going back to closer to the base of Kevin Stefanski's wheelhouse here, offensively speaking. So it seems like the install is going smooth. It did not seem like there was a lot of start-stop jankiness that we were hearing about. And from the number of pass attempts that we saw coming out of camp, seems like they got a lot of plays off, got a lot of install, I would say. And then when you hear the coaches talk, it seems like every coach is pretty pleased with what they've seen so far out of OTAs, right? And that's what you want to see. You don't want to see a bunch of pre-snap stuff. You don't want to see a bunch of alignment issues, a bunch of start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. If you've ever practiced or prepared for a team, no matter what level, it could be high school, it could be junior high, it could be, peewee. Like, if you've ever prepared for a season in a sport that runs plays, like basketball, you could do this in baseball, football, you know what it feels like when that install ain't going well, when you guys aren't really getting the gist of the play and you got to stop, teach something, go again, stop. And that's what a bad OTAs looks like. That's what OTAs is worth being concerned about looks like. The Browns seem to have not had that experience, even while bringing together a lot of rookies on the rosters, and rookies who are going to be taking key spots. So it says positive things about that class, and we'll talk about the rookie class in just a second here. But that's the first thing I've noticed. Seems like everybody's pleased with the progress. Doesn't seem like they're behind. We're not hearing Kevin or Jim Schwartz having to cuss out the guys because they're behind progress somewhere in OTAs. It seems like they're handling business, and you would expect that, right? This offense is going back to something they're familiar with. This defense has been running the same scheme for the last 2 seasons. So going into the third offseason of that, you expect all the install stuff to go pretty smoothly with this much veterans or as many veterans who have been in this system for a while as the Cleveland Browns have. And, that's where you're at. It's worth noting because it wasn't there last year. It seems like the coaches are pretty excited as well about this rookie class. We've heard every coach gush about one of their rookies at a certain point here, right? The defensive line coach was just at his press conference basically gushing over Mason Graham. He thinks Mason Graham's going to be really good. He's really encouraged with what he's seen out of Mason Graham. I know some people on the internet have made a point to try to dunk on Mason Graham. Okay, well, let's just let him put pads on. We'll see how it looks. Now, with Mason, I will say I do expect him to have a bit of a slower start just because of the position he plays. If you know me, I'm a big defensive tackle guy, big three-tech guy. I love breaking down three-techs. One of the things you learn when you're into that level, that kind of play is that takes a little while to translate, right? I expect Mason Graham to get his ass beat first couple weeks of camp, maybe even up into the third week of camp, right? I expect him to get his ass beat a little bit because he's going to go up in that interior against Wyatt Teller, against Joe Bitonio, some veterans, Ethan Posick. He going to learn what he can't get away with very early in his career, and the Browns are going to teach that to him. So he might get his ass whipped for the first couple of weeks. It's more about how you respond. So with Mason, I'm playing a long game. Get them pads on. Let's see what you look like. And then once he gets those pads on, probably going to be another breakdown process where they're going to have to teach him what he can and cannot get away with, what he can do, what he cannot do. And then he'll start to probably get a hang of it. You also have to worry about the strength stuff, right? How much is he going to get away with in year one when he just needs to pick up more weight? And then, year 2, year 3 is really where you expect that turn for defensive tackle. So, play the long game with Mason Graham, understand that it might not come super early with him. And if it does, it's just an indication he's going to be a really, really good player in the future because you just don't see peak defensive tackle play early in guys' career. You see it much later. So that is something to think about with Mason. Quincy, on the other hand, right, he's the opposite, where running backs, you usually see peak play closer to the start of these guys' career than to the end. Quincy looks physically ready. He looks like one of the best athletes on the field. He looks pretty quick, pretty fast. He's running the ball at 11 on 11s. It's non-contact, but it still looks very impressive. He's a big guy, 225 pounds. He should be able to take carries week 1. And I'm excited to see what he looks like in pads because then we can unlock the physicality in his game, which I think separates him and puts him on a whole different level here. Let's see. Carson Swessinger, really haven't seen much out of Carson just because of the nature of how these OTAs go. The little bit I've seen, I've been pretty encouraged so far. Another position where you're going to want to be a little bit more patient with because it's not one of those positions you could just come out of college, master year 1 for most prospects. And then we go Harold Fainer Jr. I have heard nothing but people raving about Harold Fainer Jr. Apparently, to everybody who's there at camp, he must look amazing out there. I don't know if we've seen enough video clips of Harold, but everybody who I know who's at practice, first thing they mention is Harold Fainer Jr. So apparently he looks pretty good. Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, I'll talk about at the end of this whole class. We'll talk about Dylan Sampson real quick. Looks quick. Looks like he's going to be an agile back. We'll see what it looks like with pads on, kind of similar to Q. He's not as big as Q, but I can see where he could be very useful. He definitely doesn't look frail or anything like that. All right, let's jump to the 2 quarterbacks. I think with Dylan, from what I hear, when they're both going up against second and third stringers, Dylan and Shedeur both look pretty solid. Dylan, when he's going up against that first team, you start to see more of the cracks in the armor. To be fair, that's going to happen to anybody who plays this Browns first team defense. It's a pretty good defense. So not really too concerned about a guy, who's 6 months removed from playing college football, struggling against NFL players. That makes sense. The same way that I really wouldn't freak out if Shedeur Sanders had bad completion percentage numbers or something against the first team in OTAs. I really would not care, right? It's interesting because throughout the course of the year, I know how this is going to work because I've lived through it before. But throughout the course of the year, depending on what people are doing with Shedeur Sanders, I'm either going to be perceived as an ally to the Shedeur Sanders fans or an enemy to the Shedeur Sanders fans, right? If Shedeur gets out there and he starts struggling against the first team, I'm probably going to be seen as an ally to them because I'm going to be out here being like, hey, it's ridiculous. He's a rookie, y'all. Like, slow it down, right? But right now they don't really like me because I'm telling people to just take your time, right? You know, we don't got to rush it. They want to rush it right now. It's going to be fun seeing how that sways. I'm just going to stand my ground with it, right? I like Shedeur Sanders as a prospect, but I have no reason to rush it right now. I don't think the Browns have any reason to rush it. And just take your time with it. There's really no rush. This is not a rush it season for the Cleveland Browns. Take your time. But yeah, so far so good with all the quarterbacks, all the draft picks. You got seem like the cosign from all the coaches. That seems great. Players seem to be excited about the change of direction when it comes to practice. I'm excited about the apparent change of direction. Look, it's been more physical. It's been more team drill oriented, and it seems like that's something that they plan on carrying over and expanding in a much greater way in training camp. I applaud that 110%. I've been begging them to do that. One of my main criticisms with Kevin is that we just run too much of a lenient camp and we're too worried about injury. So super excited to see what camp looks like. 2 joint practices. Hopefully we get starters in the games, in the preseason games this year. I want that as well. But it seems like the players are excited about that direction that camp seems to be headed in. And the most important thing, the Browns don't have any strange holdout situations, and the Browns don't have any injuries right now. That's the main thing, right? That last line right there, that's all you want to come out of OTAs with, right? Pass the basic test, make sure nobody gets hurt, make sure you got no more lingering contract situations, because if it goes on past OTAs, it starts to get a little bit more distracting. Browns don't have that. They cleared the Myles Garrett situation a long time ago. They don't have anybody demanding new money, not showing up here or there. We got none of that Trey Henderson, Cincinnati, Shamar Stewart stuff going on here in Cleveland. Everybody's taken care of because Cleveland is not such a cheap organization. They're going to nickel and dime you over pretty small stuff like Cincinnati is right now with their first-round draft pick, to the point to where he's considering going back into the draft. We don't have that going on. We don't have any injuries. We're good. So as far as OTAs, I consider it a pass for the Cleveland Browns. They've gotten what they need to get out of it. You're walking out of OTAs with some encouragement about the quarterback position. You're walking out of OTAs with some encouragement about this rookie class. You're walking out of OTAs excited about the direction that the practices were being taken and what that means for how they're going to get prepared for training camp. And you're walking out of OTAs with everybody seemingly on the same page. Nobody holding out. No injuries. It's a complete win. That's what you want, right? That's what you want out of OTAs. The Browns have a storyless OTAs, and that's the point. That's good. So as far as OTAs go, I consider it a pass. I'm happy with where the Browns are. Let me know what you think in the comment section below about how OTAs and minicamp went, to, the few clips and glimpses that we got to see out of it. But I'm pretty happy with it. Y'all let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.